Okay, people. So today I am joined by Andrew Seaton, and we're here to talk about his new film. Well, new short, right? AstroNots. Andrew,
Hello.
thank you for passing through, man.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Pleasure to be here.
No worries at all. No worries at all. I really enjoyed Astronauts,
Oh,
man.
thank you.
I
Cheers.
really enjoyed Astronauts. It was ah like your balance of humor and everything and the timing was just spot on. It was great.
Appreciate that, man. The timing was something that was quite a challenge to get right. And it's really interesting now, having gone through the process and getting to go out and watch it with audiences, that you see where the timing's working, and all the hard yards in post, and all the iterations on the edit kind of all come to the fore, and it's all worth it in the end. So yeah, thank you.
Mm. Where did the idea for this one come from?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of shorts in the past before, and I started developing my first feature, and I was just longing to make another short. I was really excited to make another short. I thought I should do another one. It had been a while since I'd done one, and so I got together with my good friend Adam, who is one of the writers and one of the actors in the film, and I said, have you got any shorts, that you've been working on that you might want to take into production? And he pitched me and my co-founder Matt Samperi a couple of different ideas. All were great ideas, but nothing quite was right.
Mm.
And he was just about to walk out the door, and he turned around and he goes, "I've got one other thing. It's two guys sitting on the launch pad, in the space shuttle, about to take off to Mars. One turns to the other and says, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've absolutely fluked my way through this. What's going to happen?" And we absolutely loved it from that first moment, for a couple of reasons. One, we thought, like, it's just such a funny premise, just such a fish out of water scenario that is always really exciting and comedic to watch. But also from a production company standpoint, it sounded quite achievable.
Yeah.
Two guys, one location, and I knew that if I was going to be developing this feature and making a short at the same time, I wanted the short to be achievable. Um, Now it ended up being far bigger than I think we ever imagined it would be, with custom build of a set, and we 3D printed the helmets so that they were custom, and all sorts of things. So and I think there was over 170 something VFX shots in there as well. So it was much bigger than we ever thought it was going to be, or ever said about it being. But it was a labor of love, as every short film is. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that whole because having someone be like, "Oh, yeah, I kind of, what I mean, just blagged my way through this," can sound implausible, right? But it was just the use of language. It what I mean? Like, yeah, no, but you crushed it. No, I crashed it. It was just like, oh my God, that's great. That's so good.
Yeah, it was. We talked about that in, I kind of worked with Adam and Aaron, the two guys that are our two characters in the film. They co-wrote the script together, and you can kind of feel that through the film as well, the way that they play off each other. You can tell that they've kind of been instrumental in kind of building those characters together, which is really lovely. And so we talked about, the plausibility of could someone kind of fluke their way through this, and obviously no, someone probably couldn't, but could they kind of get through just with all these kind of little miscommunications? Yeah, maybe. But also,
Mm,
maybe the fact is that, we've gotten to a point in trying to save the planet that we've run out of time, and and,
yeah.
and that's kind of what the end of the film is like, we've run out of time. Sorry, like, we know he's not qualified, but we've run out of time. We've got no other options here, so it has to be him. So yeah, it was the plausibility of it actually, I think, kind of lent into the theme of the film as well, in a really nice way.
Yeah. Oh, and just the way this starts, right? This, we see this planet, but then we realize what we're actually looking at, right? Going into that first initial scene. I just thought that was such a smart little, you know what I mean? Playing
Yeah,
into the pool cue.
yeah. So yeah, that was the whole thing that I wanted to do with this film was a bit of a misdirect. I wanted the film to look and feel like a Hollywood blockbuster sci-fi astronaut film. You know, that everyone is familiar with. You know, Apollo 13, Gravity. Everyone's kind of familiar with these films, and familiar with the kind of character that is completely competent in those situations. No matter what happens, you know, if the airlock blows open, they know what to do and they can survive.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do was present the audience with that, but then completely pull the rug out from under them when we realized that both of these characters essentially are completely inept and are there for the wrong reasons. And so we devised this technique at the beginning where what you think is a planet is presented, and then we reveal that it's a pool cue in a pub. And that kind of, for me, talks thematically to that sort of we're presenting something that you think you understand, but really it's not what you think at all. And so that as a theme, we kind of continued through from that opening frame through the film thematically as well. So yeah, and so everything we did was in aid of presenting it in a way that it felt familiar and it felt legitimate as well. It felt like a real astronaut film. You know, it could be First Man, it could be any of these kind of blockbusters that we're so familiar with. But hang on, something's a bit different, something's a bit off.
Yeah. You know, when watching this, Red Dwarf jumped to mind. Yeah.
A couple of people have mentioned Red Dwarf to me, and again, I think that's so fantastic. That, I mean, I obviously love Red Dwarf, and the style of comedy of Red Dwarf, I absolutely love too. That sort of dryness of humor, I really align with. But again, it's like I love that people are referencing that as a point of reference as well, because again, it just leans into that it's familiar, right? So I really like that that people are seeing parallels there.
Yeah, because I remember, I think it was, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, there was this like sci-fi show with Hugh Laurie in it. I think it was Avenue 7.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was like the ship went off course or something. And I thought, oh, because it was, I think it was the guy that did the thick of it, created the show. So, like, super talented people. But I watched the first episode and I just was not jazzed. I didn't vibe with it at all. And I'm just like, something like AstroNots all day. Like, I could watch a season of that. That, you know what I mean? It, because I think it feels very natural. But sometimes you'll watch these things, like recently Prime dropped Space Cadet, and they just feel so forced. It's just like, oh, we need to be funny, so we're gonna do this, and let's create this wacky scenario, and it's just like, it just doesn't work, you know. So
yeah,
it's just refreshing to get something that is simple, but at its core, it's just genuinely smart and funny.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. You know, people have been drawing a lot of comparisons to both of those shows as well, which is really, you know, very nice to be mentioned alongside those shows. But I think the style of comedy that I personally love is that sort of slightly darker, slightly less kind of big set piece kind of laugh, and more of a subtle hum, I guess. And for me, it was, can we sustain that? The film's 10.5 minutes. Can we sustain that hum throughout? And when we were writing, or when the boys were writing it, and I was kind of helping them kind of finalize the script, it was like, where are the gags? How are the gags spread out? And are the gags the best they can be? And for me, it's about having those written, but then also on set having the freedom to improvise as well. And I think that's kind of that sort of like subtle humor plus a bit of improvisation, I think, kind of melds together to create this style of comedy that, yeah, isn't kind of super broad and cheesy, but is a bit more subtle, a bit more refined. And that's kind of where I like to live.
Yeah. Like, did it take long to go from that initial meeting and idea to production?
No, it probably only took it took a couple of months to go from that first meeting. The guys had a version of the script together that they just kind of bashed out in one of their writing sessions. So it took us a bit of time for the boys to kind of sit down and refine that. And then from a production point of view, we were looking at ways in which we could achieve this on very limited budget. And we were looking at all kinds of ways. So we're in Sydney, Australia, which has a great film production world, but it's quite small. And so, doing things like this over in LA, for example, it feels far more achievable. And we actually found a company in LA who have a couple of space shuttle interior sets that are sitting in storage that you can rent for a day and put it on a soundstage, and it's already built, it's already made. And we're like, oh, that's the way to go. So we were contemplating, do we go over to LA to shoot it, or do we build it bespoke and from scratch here? And so that took a couple of months, kind of just to think about what was the best, most cost effective way to make this. And ultimately, we ended up shooting it here in Sydney, on a soundstage here in Sydney, with a custom built set. Although we would have loved to travel over to LA to shoot it, but yeah, cost was just a factor that we needed to consider. So yeah, no, it was pretty quick between that initial meeting and then going into production. Yeah, it was more about kind of refining the script and finding those characters as well. Because originally, Abe, who's the kind of bumbling, out of his depth character, was more of like a bit more of an airhead, a bit more of a for want of a better term, kind of like really relaxed surfer kind of guy, which when we were kind of working through the script seemed funny, but it kind of pushed that implausibility that you're talking about, Scott, Kevin, like a little bit further.
Yes.
Whereas we paired him back to being, yes, out of his depths, but still kind of lovable in a way. Like you can kind of feel for him that he has kind of just gone with the flow, and found himself in this situation. So yeah, it was pretty quick between the boys already had a pretty solid script in place. So it was just about refining that and then finding out how to best bring it to life.
I like the fact that you pair that character back, right? Because I think that's the issue a lot of the times. People think, okay, this will work if we really make this person so dumb, so ridiculous. But then it's just like, all right, but if they're supposedly that dumb, how would they do these things?
Yeah.
Right. To get from there to there doesn't make any sense. So with this, having the guy be, the drone part, like, so you'd be like, okay, so he knows how to do things, just not this thing, right?
Yeah,
He's got some smarts about him, but there's certain things that he can't do, clearly.
yeah. He needed to be just that that level of of incompetence that on the outside doesn't show,
Yeah,
and I think that's the difference, right? It's like we could have pushed the character further so that the incompetence showed on the outside, and I don't think the character would have been as funny, b as believable, or C as endearing as the character ended up being, because you kind of feel for him, you
yeah,
know. He has, by with no malice or forethought, kind of ended up in this situation and is completely out of his depths, having a panic attack. And put yourself in that situation where you're sitting upright in a spaceship about to be thrown into the abyss. Like, it would be terrifying for someone who doesn't, is not fully prepared for it. So, or even for people who are fully prepared for it, let's not lie, like, it would be terrifying. So, um, you know, it's kind of a crazy concept to think about, being hurtled into space like that, strapped to an absolute massive rocket. But
yeah.
yeah, not for
But
me.
I think people can emphasize with that character. I'm sure there's people that have been in those situations, say at work, right?
Mhm.
They're crunching numbers, and then suddenly they're called into the boardroom to present, and they're like, I don't present. I'm not I I don't public speak. Like, what? Like, but just because you're good at compiling those figures, they think, oh, you can present it. So what I mean? Like, I think those are kind of scenarios you think, yeah, I've been in that. I can see that. So you can watch that character and be like, oh shit. Yeah, I feel for that. I feel for that dude.
Yeah, and that was like that was a conscious thing. It's like we wanted him for people to empathize with him, like he, at the end of the day, he's a real guy, and yes, he may have doomed humanity being there, but he feels bad about it. At least he feels bad about it, and there's one point in the film where he gets berated by the captain of the ship, Collins, and you just see this kind of hurt in his eyes, and Aaron's a phenomenal actor, that he has this real subtlety to his performance that is just heartbreaking at times. Like, I remember being on set, and I was I was pushing him in the moment to kind of get to that place of just pure terror, and overwhelming anxiety, And I think it was the take that ended up in the film, where he's sitting in there, and there's just this single tear kind of rolls down his eyes as he's kind of internalizing this panic, and it's just like the the moment feels real, and it feels, you feel for him in
Mm.
that moment. And yeah, it was a real gift getting to work with both Adam and Aaron. But yeah, the boys kind of brought so much to those characters that it elevated them without kind of making them caricaturish, by any means. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the interplay between them that works so well.
Mm.
Right. Because as you said, you have oh gosh, Tom, right? You
Yeah.
have him berating Abe.
Hmm.
But then there's that bit where Abe's like, "Oh, but you wanted to do this, right?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah." So even though on paper, right, the commander's the one in the right, and you're looking at him like, "Oh, he's the dude that knows," there's still the motives, the motivations aren't necessarily on point, right? And you still need to be pulled up on certain things. So what I mean? I think it worked well in that regard, right? Making that just because this character doesn't know anything and isn't probably going to be that helpful, his moral core is still there.
Yeah. And so that you've hit the nail on the head there. It's like we wanted Tom's character to not be completely righteous in that moment, still have flaws, and his flaw is that he's not there for the right purpose either. He's there for his
Mm.
own self gain and his own legacy. And yeah, we've that interplay between, well, your Abe's character, you're not quite suited for this, but is Tom suited for this either, or is he, is he meant to be the one that's going to go and kind of save humanity and save the planet from and the human race from extinction? Is that who you want? Someone that's just there for legacy and not there for the right reasons of trying to save the planet. So having that interplay between those two characters, yeah, I think kind of allowed for some really dramatic moments, but some real comedic moments too, where you have those two kind of playing off each other.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, Adam and Aaron, right? They wrote the script,
Mm-hmm.
and they are the stars of this.
Yes.
Was that always the fault of having them star in it?
Yeah, it was always the intention to have them star in it as well. So I've worked with Adam on a couple of other projects before, and love working with him. And what I loved about having the guys write it and perform in it as well was that it meant that we could actually almost shoot it like a stage play, and allow, because it's essentially one scene that we're seeing. Basically, when we're on the soundstage in the shuttle, we shot it almost like a stage play, just from kind of from one end to the other of the film. Obviously from multiple different angles and all that sort of stuff, but it allowed the interplay between those two characters to really come to life. And so I think having them have written it and then perform it just kind of added to that level of understanding of character and that level of understanding of story and theme, so that they could kind of play with it as you would on a live stage. You'd kind of find it and you'd feel it, and you'd find those moments of improvisation. You'd find those moments where it's not scripted, but there's a moment that you find. So having them be both writer and performer was a real luxury to have, actually, because they were so ingrained in the process that it made shooting it so much more exciting.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Though you've worked with Adam before,
Yes.
right? And was there any kind of thought, what if Aaron doesn't quite cut it? Like, how do we pivot if, once we go and say there's no the chemistry doesn't work?
Well, Aaron himself is an incredibly accomplished actor, so there was never any doubt that he wasn't going to hit it. And those two guys have known each other for a long time as well, so there was already a chemistry there. And in rehearsals, and as we kind of played with that character, that all became really clear that this is going to work. What the interesting thing was, Kevin, is normally Aaron historically has played the straight guy, the straight man, and Adam has kind of played the kind of bigger comedic role. Whereas in this, they've actually kind of swapped those two roles, which is just kind of interesting, and I think they both nail it. But just historically in their past kind of credits, that's kind of how they've fallen. But so that was a really interesting thing for them to play with, is for Adam to kind of be the straight man in the scenario and kind of give those really like kind of comedic expressions and reactions, and then Aaron to kind of have these kind of bigger comedic lines, or the sort of bigger comedy character within that. So that was a really interesting thing for the guys to play with as well. But no, there was never any doubt that they wouldn't have that chemistry, just given their history together.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Did they ever talk about why they decided to flip it like that?
No, I don't know. I think that actually kind of came out of working on the script together with them, and kind of developing those characters along with them. That it kind of went to that point. But I don't know whether it was ever a conscious thing to kind of flip their status quo like that by any means. I don't think so. No.
Okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
Now, while developing, this, how far did you go? How far did you actually go? Right? Because I read in the EPX that, you know, the idea is to create a series, which I didn't see that at first. So I was kind of like, oh man, like this could be a great series. Like I'd watch this show. And then I read, oh, that's a plan. That's good. So has a Bible been created? You know what I mean? Like, do we have the full arc of the character? Have you mapped out like just season one, or have we got a plan for, I don't know, 7 seasons or whatnot?
So the guys have been working on the series development, and so we kind of have we don't have a Bible kind of created yet, but we do kind of know what our series arc would be, which is really exciting. And when we went into making the short, we didn't quite know where the series would go. We hadn't really gotten that far into developing the series as it stands at that point.
Mm.
But what was important for me was for the short to leave on a bit of a question mark or on a bit of a cliffhanger. And there's a little cutscene after the credits
Yeah.
where we give a bit more kind of clues as to what's happened, right? They haven't, they've I won't give it away, but it was important for me and for us as the production company to have that in the short, because it was illustrative of, or there is something more to come.
Yeah.
So yeah, the series is still very much in development. The arc is there, but we're still kind of working with Adam and Aaron and kind of starting to really get that Bible together and see where we take it. So it's been really, really exciting to kind of have the short and have it live and breathe, and then have it do the festival circuit and have all the reactions at festival level, which it's been really successful at, and watch it with audiences as well, which for a short film is really exciting to kind of get to sit in a bunch of different audiences and different styles of audiences and stuff. And excited to head over to Montreal for Fantasia next week and watch it with another audience there, just to see kind of what's hitting and what's not, and help that kind of inform our series Bible as well. So yeah, still very much in development, but yeah, looking forward to kind of working further on it and extrapolating it out. Given the success of the short.
Okay. Now you've worked on a couple of TV series in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So is that why you kind of figured to run it as a TV series rather than, say, maybe a film franchise?
Yeah, well, we were kind of tossing up whether we take it out to pitch as a series or a feature, and we opted for series just because we thought there is so much here that we can mine. We've literally only seen the first kind of slice of these guys, and we know that they work together really nicely, these two characters. And we felt that a series would give us so much more time to play with that and see where that goes, and we can investigate so many more aspects within that series rather than just going down a feature road. Also, just the style of comedy of it as well. It kind of felt like it, a short form episodic structure to it would work really nicely. Like as you brought up Red Dwarf, that sort of bite size comedy series kind of felt nicer placed for it rather than a feature where it might feel as though it drags a little, that sort of style. So yeah, that's kind of why we've ventured down that road.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess, when the TV series is popping off and everyone's loving it, you can always do a film spin-off, to cap it, or what I mean, just as a side note down the line.
Yeah. I mean, that would be ideal. So, yeah, if we get to that point, most certainly, yeah.
I mean, when you get to that point,
When we get to that point, sure.
Yeah. I also doing this as a TV series because I've seen recently that platforms like Paramount and Max and Disney, they're looking for regional content. You know what I mean? Like I think it's either NCIS or Law and Order, one of those. There's a Sydney.
Yeah.
And
Sydney just happened.
yeah, like and it looks like I think Prime had that Citadel series, and I think it's a Spanish version. They've done a Spanish spin-off.
Nice.
So you're getting these streamers wanting to do more international content.
Mm-hmm.
So as doing something like AstroNots as a series, is that part of the discussion that maybe with these platforms looking for regional content, that if you develop this thing that is well crafted, easy to put together, that you could jump in on one of these situations?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really considered that, but yeah, it is a universal kind of universally recognizable scenario, right? That kind of fish out of water. So it does feel like something that could be quite easily transferable to different markets if the appetite's there for it, for sure.
Yeah, and I think people love comedy, right? When you look at, there's so many comedies, and some work, some don't, but it's that content that I think, as you said, like people can speak a whole heap of different languages, but there is something about comedy that it can cut through so many things, and become that universal thing. Right.
Yeah.
And especially a scenario of we need to save the planet. Right. Like,
Yeah.
what I mean? So yeah, I think it's one of those, stories that, I think could gravitate.
Yeah, I think also, coming from Australia, our sense of humor is, I think, really well aligned with, the States and Canada and New Zealand and the UK. Like, I think we all kind of have a similar sense of humor. So I do think it would travel pretty well, the kind of sense of the humor that we've created within this. So yeah, I think it would transfer nicely.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, with this, like, and the humor, because it works so well, but what is the thought about keeping it fresh, right? Like, because I think and it's one of those things, right? When you look at the English Office to the American Office. Now, I did think the American Office is funny, but British Office, I think it's like what, 6 episodes a season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's very concise. It's very tight. So do you think it's like keep the episode count down? Right? Keep the time down so there's no flabbiness. So we're very sharp with it.
Yes, most certainly. Like, I think the arc that we've got at the moment is 8 to 10 episodes. We wouldn't be going out to pitch with like a longer 22 or 24 episode season, just because I think the style of the comedy of it needs to be that short, sharp, punchy kind of series that leaves you wanting more and doesn't fatigue you. So that's our ambition with it for sure.
Okay, but I think the question is, Adam, can you stick to your guns? You know what I mean? If I'm big money bags Netflix and I'm like, yo, I love this. It's a great idea. You know what? I kind of envision it as a 20-season series. Like, let's go 30 episodes a season. You know what I mean? We'll make it 1 million episodes. Can we do this? Can we do this?
Well, I guess that comes down to the writing, doesn't it? Like, if the writing can sustain that, then power to it, I guess. But like the American Office, like that has 1 billion episodes, but it still has the punchiness of the comedy to it. So
Yeah.
And they found a like a story engine that is just so unrelenting. So it works. So I think it comes down to ultimately it comes down to the writing and whether the writing can sustain that. Whether the writing has the legs to kind of go 1 million episodes, we'll see.
Yeah. Like, do you create a writer's room for this, or just leave it up to Adam and Aaron to?
Yeah. So that's been a conversation we've been having, is whether we have it as just Adam and Aaron and or then whether we open it up to a writer's room. And I think at the moment we're just kind of figuring out what our pitch arc would be, and then we'll kind of make that call a little further down the line as we start to go in and actually formulate episodes. I'd love to have it as a writer's room, just because I think it would bring more voices in and more ideas and only improve it, I think. So
yeah, I mean, you can definitely see the fun of that, right? As you said, because I think being able to bounce ideas off of people is always fun. So yeah, that could be interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned earlier that you 3D printed the helmets.
Yes, yeah. So like I was saying, obviously the Australian market so much smaller than overseas, and our ability to get our hands on helmets that looked legitimate and that felt unique was very limited. When we looked at importing helmets from overseas, and the cost was just huge. And so we actually ended up designing the helmet ourselves off some plans that we found for what's known as an ACES helmet design. We augmented it slightly to make it a bit more camera friendly, so it kind of made the face gap a little bigger and a little wider, a little deeper, just so we could see the actors' faces whilst they're wearing the helmet a little cleaner. And then we 3D printed them, and we put them together ourselves, and painted and learned a lot about that process in the making of those. That's actually one behind me there. That's one of the helmets just there.
Okay.
Yeah. So put it together, and they were because they were 3D printed. They weren't the the most durable things in the world. So on set, it was like quite a delicate process to get the lads into them without having any catastrophic failures on the construction. But they held up for the shoot with a little bit of help of hot glue and gaffer tape, and yeah, so that was a whole process in and of itself. Was designing and making those and making sure they felt, as I was saying, I wanted it to feel legitimate. I didn't want it to feel kind of goofy or caricaturish.
Yeah.
So being able to do that was really great.
Okay, so that's the first time you had done that.
Yeah. So my co-founder Matt Samperi, big fan of like new tech, and he was also the DP on this film, and it has a real tech brain, and so he's been obsessed with 3D printing for the last couple of years, and we would like, do we get a motorbike helmet and kind of augment a motorbike helmet? Do we, how do we do this? And we talked to a couple of prop makers and specialist costume people, and looked at what we could hire here in Australia and what we could purchase from overseas. And we kind of went one day, what if we just printed it ourselves? And so it was a process. It was like a couple of months of actually putting them together. And the printer that we had only could print, a certain size piece at a time. So it was, instead of printing it all in one kind of piece, it was, I think, like 5 or 6 pieces that then get glued together and sanded down so that they look like they're all one piece. So it would have been far easier if we had a bigger printer and we could have just printed it all in one go, but we only had this smaller printer, so we had to construct it ourselves. But yeah, it was a enlightening process, and pretty like from a filmmaker's perspective, like pretty cool. Like I worked in art departments for many years as like a standby and an art assistant, that sort of stuff. And just going like, oh, we need XYZ kind of strange prop, being able to like design that on a computer and print it as a prop maker is like really cool. Like, rather than the days of, sculpting it in clay and then making a mold and then, that whole process, being able to do it and print it is kind of, yeah, really cool from a filmmaking perspective. It kind of opens up a lot of doors, especially in this sort of like sci-fi genre as well. Like I'm sure a lot of people are using it these days to kind of create weird and wacky props and set pieces.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And it is kind of fitting, right? Like 3D printing for sci-fi.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Sci-fi in and of itself.
You've mentioned it, that the scene is small, which, like, can you break that down? Because, we often hear so many big productions go to Australia to film.
Yeah. Well, purely our a lot of people come down here to film, and it's a great place to film. And it's just that in comparison to like the industry in LA, it's a much smaller industry, and so our resources are just more limited. So take for example like a backlot. Like we normally have to construct a backlot here in Sydney. There are a couple that are popping up, but like in LA, there's you have a whole range of different backlot options that you can shoot on. So it's just our access to those sort of things is slightly more limited down here. What we do have down here is really, really high quality. So our technicians and our creatives down here are like some of the best in the world. And I've worked in LA for a bit, so and London for a bit, and so have had exposure to those kinds of crews and creatives as well. And yeah, I like, that's why people come down here is that the creatives and the technicians down here are top class. But yeah, just those resources are just slightly limited, just because of our industry being that much smaller than say London or LA.
Okay. Right.
So for example, like, you know, there's kind of one big costume hire place here in Sydney, whereas there's only a couple of prop hire places here in Sydney to cater for the industry. Whereas in LA and London, there's more options.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, in LA there was a whole mob that just do space interior sets, like shuttle interiors, that we could have hired, which was mind-boggling. You know.
Oh God, yeah. When you said that, I was just like, wait, what? Really? So
Yeah.
it makes sense,
Yeah.
right? It does make sense, but just hearing it, you're just like, wait, what?
It's such a weird, like, tiny little niche, but it
Yeah.
made like it wouldn't exist in the scale of industry that we have here in Sydney, but in LA, like, just because it's so much bigger, the industry, it's like it's a no-brainer that there is one house that just takes care of that's all they do is space and shuttle interiors. And I was licking my lips seeing when I found those guys online. I was like, man, this is how we're going to do this, you know. Maybe for the series,
Yes.
to go over and use them.
Yeah.
We had a great. We ended up getting to work with a great team here in Sydney, in Greg Sets, who built our shuttle interior for us. You know, and those guys had worked on Alien and Star Wars and a bunch of different things. So had a wealth of experience and brought that to building our our little shuttle, which was really cool to get to work with those guys as well.
Now, when doing something like that, right, and it's just like the design for the helmets and everything like that, what is the kind of mindset? Because you know, you've got NASA, we've got the current space program, but we're going to Mars, right? It's not like we're just doing what's kind of getting done at the moment. So I guess that kind of gives you a bit more freedom to be like, well, it's this far in the future, maybe, or
Yeah.
oh, they've got this tech. So when you're doing it and you're designing the look and the feel, how far do you kind of go, well, let's push it to this, or well, let's keep it more similar to what we currently have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And working with my production designer, we talked about this, and we're like, well, you know, we could have a look and feel kind of like SpaceX and those kind of new like space programs that are really kind of sleek and modern and futuristic almost. I forget what Bezos's one is called, but you know, Jeff Bezos is he SpaceX, or is that Elon? I can't
No,
remember.
SpaceX is Elon.
Yeah, I can't remember what.
I
Both
think
of
it's new something or
yeah,
Horizon, New Horizon. It's like,
yeah, something like that, isn't it?
yeah,
But their look is like really kind of sleek and like almost something that you'd have seen in like a 60s sci-fi, you know, imagining what we would be kind of now. And
yeah, kind of Buck Rogers kind
yeah,
of.
yeah. And I actively said, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go like fully sci-fi or science, like fully like futuristic, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, with all touch screens and like, you know, hologram, like heads up displays and all that sort of stuff. I said, you know, what I want to do is I want it to look and feel like something that the audience is familiar with. It's not super far in the future. It's not even current. Like, it's not the space the New Horizon or anything like that, it feels familiar. It feels like Apollo 11. It feels like First Man. It feels like Gravity. It feels like Space Cowboys or Stowaway or anything like those films. That is tactile. There's light up buttons and greeblies and all sorts of things, but it feels familiar. So it doesn't feel futuristic. It doesn't feel old. It just feels familiar. And
Yes.
that was a conscious thing because I wanted that rug pull moment. I wanted the audience to feel like they knew where they were and they knew what they were going to expect. And that's why we went down that route of it having all the light up buttons and a familiar feel that wasn't super far flung into the future. And it's also a reason why the opening starts in a really tropey way as well. A guy sitting having a beer at a pub as the news plays, the story about these two guys taking up a space shuttle. Super tropey. It's been done a million times before, but it was a conscious thing in like putting the audience at ease and going, I know what this is. I know what this is. I know what to expect. And then we go, hang on, you do not know what to expect because these guys are not what you expect.
I did wonder at one point, was the old man Tom's dad?
Yeah. No, he wasn't meant to be. He was meant to just be a disgruntled man at the bar, kind of. There's this mission to Mars is going to save humanity, and he couldn't care less.
Yeah,
And kind of reflective of society, I guess. Going, we have this chance to kind of save the world, and they're like, whatever. Almost wanting to turn it over to the wrestling or something. So yeah, no, it wasn't meant to be Tom's dad, but it was just meant to be a reflection of society's not giving a shit about this at all.
Right. Yeah, because I was just like, oh, was the look of disdain? Be like, oh, my stupid kid thinks he can do what I did. Idiot.
Good luck.
Like, because I mean, I think people often think New Zealand is closer to you guys than it is.
Mm-hmm.
But is like there's wetters over in New Zealand and they do some great work with design and that kind of thing. So could that be a potential resource in the future?
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly it could be. I mean, there's a bunch of great kind of designers. Like Odd Studio here in Sydney is amazing.
Oh, I forgot about those guys.
Yeah. So they did Alien, and their credit list is crazy too. But so they're those guys would be amazing to work with. The guys over at Weather, of course. They're legends over there. Yeah, if we can, most certainly.
Yeah, because I think I read that Peter and Fran had bought up like a whole heap of land, and they're like looking to put in some sound stages and really develop, for like making films locally.
Yeah, I heard that too, which would be awesome. Which would be really, really cool. Plus, New Zealand's amazing to travel to as well. So, apart from working,
less things that can kill you.
Yeah, just skiing accidents. And
luckily, I don't do that, so I'm all good. Oh man, no, this AstroNots, just what you have in store sounds great. I am definitely on board for this. Like, what kind of is the next step here?
Yeah, so the next kind of step here is for us to kind of further develop our pitch, our Bible, and what we want to do with the series, and then we'll take it out. So we've already had a couple of like really preliminary discussions with some of the streamers about it, and kind of showing them the short as a proof of concept, I suppose, which they've really enjoyed. And so it'll be about kind of finding where that interest lies, and finding a partner with which we can like help develop it and take it into development. So that's kind of the next step is finding potentially a co-pro opportunity to kind of take it out to market and talk to some of the streamers would be our first port of call, because we think it would live really nicely on one of the streamers, and yeah, go from there.
Sounds great. And festival wise, right after Fantasia, have you got any others lined up?
So Fantasia is the next one, which is our screening is next Monday. So we're really looking forward to that. I think we have another kind of like dozen festivals to hear back from, which will be in the back end of this year. So nothing that's lined up, nothing that's been confirmed yet, but hopefully a couple more to go that we've got our eye on. So,
okay, have you applied for Sci-Fi London?
Sorry, you just cut out there, Kevin.
Oh, have you applied for Sci-Fi London?
I don't know whether we have applied for Sci-Fi London. Recommendation of yours?
Yeah, I think that would be a good fit. I think AstroNots would be a very good fit for.
Okay, I'll check it out after this and send it through to the producers and say, hey, we should enter this one too.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Awesome.
All right. So you and Matt are both going to Fantasia, right?
Yes, that's right. So Matt is my co-founder of Mint, our production company, and the cinematographer off AstroNots. And so we're both heading over, getting on the flight tomorrow morning to head across to Fantasia, which we're really excited about. Super excited.
Yeah, you're screening with Pardon se trompe se trouve. I feel I butchered that, but that's the film that you're leading into.
Yes, yeah. So I'm really excited to see that film as well. The director of which did I Lost My Body, which was the animated feature that was nominated for an Academy Award back a couple of years ago now, which is a Netflix film, I believe, or it's available here on Netflix, which is a phenomenal film. It's a really cool film.
Okay.
So this is, I believe, this is his first live action feature after the success of his previous animated feature, which is great. And it's funny because we screened ahead of another animated feature called Mars Express in a festival here in Sydney, which itself is another fantastic animated French feature film. So I don't know what's happening out of France at the moment, but they're putting out some really incredible animated features. So yeah, I'm excited to see his latest film as well.
Fantastic. Will you guys be doing a Q&A after the film?
I believe we get to intro the film, so we might be doing a little Q&A beforehand, leading into the film.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, everything sounds great, man. Everything sounds great.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, like are you gonna be in Montreal for the full festival?
Unfortunately, not the full festival. So the festival opened last night, I believe.
Yeah.
And so we're only there for the week before having to head back to Sydney for a couple of other things that are going on. So we unfortunately only get that kind of middle week of the festival, but our schedule is full of going to see some great films and some other cool bits and pieces that the festival is offering as well. So yeah, unfortunately, just the week of it, but it's going to be packed. So looking forward to it.
Outstanding. So if you use Andrew and Matt at Montreal, go say hello, especially if you got a checkbook and you are looking to fund a TV series.
But even if you don't, you can still come and say hi.
Okay, I guess so. Right. Well, how can people keep track of everything that you're doing?
Yeah, so we're really you can keep track of us on Instagram at Mint Films, or myself at Andrew Seaton on Instagram, or check out our website mintfilms.com.au, which has all of our latest projects in production.
Outstanding. Well, I'm definitely going to be following with bated breath to see when this gets picked up and when I can watch season 1.
Looking forward to it. You'll be the first to get a copy, no worries.
Outstanding. And when that happens, hopefully you guys can come back and we can have some more conversations.
Would love it. Anytime. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, tremendous. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. That the short is fantastic. I love the idea. I love hearing the plans, and I hope you have a fantastic Fantasia festival.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate your time, and looking forward to the festival for sure.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, take it easy, and hopefully we will speak soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Bye.